This stuff took me a long time to learn. I had a couple of very, very, very difficult relationships, maybe within the last 5, 6 years. It's been a few 2 or 3 years since I've been in one, but they were very difficult for many reasons. The primary reason is that I chose to be in them without understanding myself sufficiently. A lot of the modern advice that I see through Instagram, the social media, it talks about trauma and compatibility, trauma compatible people and that sort of thing. I find this to be very infinitely complex, and I don't really find an easy way to grasp how to how to understand this and how to apply it. Trauma seems like a largely confusing thing, and something that they don't fully understand enough. But what I find helpful and what I have found helpful in my experience is to forget about trauma. Forget about thinking in terms of something you can fix or change, which trauma for me does seem like that's the way it is. This isn't to say that you shouldn't try to be better. You should always try to improve yourself in every way. But in relationships, for me, it's a little bit different. And I like to forget about trauma, forget about these problems, and just think in terms of preferences and power dynamics. And in every relationship, there are power dynamics. Every friendship, every relationship, everything. This this goes back millions of years, right to our roots. Right to our, like the Jordan Peterson. He talks about the lobsters and everything. They're all driven by status, right? This is just a big part of being an animal on this planet. Power dynamics does play into that. And I'm not here to say what your preference should be. I'm not here to talk about masculinity and femininity. I don't care. Whatever you want. What this is about preferences, your own personal preferences, and to understand power dynamics a little better. And this is something I didn't understand for a long time, and it caused so many problems for me in relationships. I understand myself insofar to say that I have a better relationship when the power dynamics are more swung to my side. That I that there's always a dynamic where one person has more power than the other. Not for everything, but in a lot of things, right? One person looks to the other to make the decisions. One person looks to the other to lead. One person kind of usually gets the final say, or is, you know, it's just the way it is in every relationship. Have a look at all your friendships and all your relationships. There will always be one person who has the power, who has the balance of power. I've never seen where it's equal. And for romantic relationships, you need to understand your own preference, because you can't get away from power dynamics. You can't beat this. This is a fact. This is a fact of reality. You cannot beat it. Understand your preferences. Excuse me. The best way to do that is to look at your relationships that have been the most successful. What are the ones that worked the best, that you were the happiest in, that just flowed easily? You weren't harboring resentment, which is usually what happens when the power dynamics aren't what you would prefer them to be. In my case, I've had a couple of relationships where I was definitely the one who the other person deferred to more, and these relationships were just better. One in particular, it was better. We never really used to fight. I didn't hold any resentments. We had a good time, and it was probably my most successful relationship. But then after that, I had some where my partner, I deferred to her because of just our personalities and mine, and there's no one to blame here. There's just preferences. They preferred to be in the position of power, and so did I. But because of certain qualities that I have, I let them be in that position, and I just simply didn't like it, but I wasn't aware of it, and it caused so many problems, so much fighting, and it was awful, really awful. This doesn't mean we didn't love each other. This doesn't mean we didn't have good times. It just, there was something wrong the whole time. So now that I understand that, that's something that you can quickly test for when you meet someone. Just see if they let you lead, or, if the opposite's true, if you prefer to be the one who prefers to not have the power, then test them. Excuse me, I have a cough at the moment. Then on the first date or whatever, just see if they're willing to lead, and to see if you feel comfortable with that. Figure out what you prefer. If you want to be the person who is led, find people who want to lead you. If you want to be the leader, find people who want to follow you. It's really that simple, and it makes a massive difference to your relationships. Because when you go into a date, or when you go into meeting someone, you are you are aware of your preferences. You know what to look for, you know what to test for, and if they aren't there, then you know not to do it, because it's so painful otherwise. And the other thing is just preferences in general. You don't have to think in terms of, I'm traumatized, so I need this kind of person, or maybe, like avoidant, anxious, and all these terms. Just think of your preferences. Do you prefer someone who's more feminine, who's less feminine, masculine? Do you prefer this or that, affection? All these preferences that you have, you just find someone who falls in line with those preferences. It really is that simple. The problem is, some people, have to suffer a great deal to understand themselves. The only reason I know this is because I had some really incredibly difficult relationships that were so painful, so difficult to get away from, that I will never forget. But I learned so much about myself, and I know that from now on, I would never get into something that was like that again, because I just know myself. I know other people to an extent. We never know someone, but I know how to test them. I know what to look for. And when I meet people, I simply just ask questions, and it's not like I'm manipulating. I'm just behaving in the ways that I prefer and seeing how they react. But most people won't learn this by me telling you. But maybe some people will just start to think of it a bit more. But really, the main way to learn is you just have to have a bunch of really difficult relationships, and then eventually you learn. Some people faster than others. It took me a fair while. But it is quite simple. Figure out the power dynamic you prefer. Figure your preferences out, and just find those. Thanks, guys.